Shrek, yo, what's your favorite cuisine? I eat frogs and bugs and dung beetle pie. Sometimes I eat my snot and I don't know why.
I'm actually a pro Mario Kart champion, 5 years in the league now. It's been hard, you know, trying to be the best of the best, always, constantly. Bibble Nation attack! You gotta watch out, you never know when Bibble's coming! He's coming after you!
I am not gonna get attacked by anybody.
You're on Bibble Nation's top of the hit list.
I'd like to see that list.
You motherfuckers will be playing basketball in Pelican Bay.
Bibble Nation's gonna burn your house down now.
For asking for some advice?
Yeah.
What if I wanted to tell him, hey, I don't like how your house is decorated? You heard that in the background. It sounded like the airplane was going off, but something exploded.
Bibble Nation said,
Immediate attack. They already started controlling the plane. They took over it, and it's aiming directly at this apartment.
Welcome back, or welcome to the podcast if you're new here. I'm Christina, this is my brother Spencer, and we made this podcast to just show that communication is key in all aspects of life. If there's anything that we talk about that you would like to hear more on, or something that we don't talk about that you would like to hear our opinion on, you can always let us know on our social medias, or if you're watching this on YouTube, you can let us know in the comments below. And we're on Spotify, so if you're, at the grocery store or on the tarmac running after an airplane that has gold in it, pop those earbuds in and turn on some Spotify.
I don't know what you just said. What's a tarmac?
Like where the plane sits on the tarmac.
Oh my gosh, there's a name for it. You just taught me something today I did not know. I was like, what are you referring to? Like, is that like the pilot's like backup name?
It's his code name?
Yeah, it is. They're like over the intercom. They're like, hey, tarmac, can you get us the coffee while you're in the middle of flying the plane? And then he spills it all over the dashboard because he tries to hand it to Jeff, who's clumsy.
Does it have to always be a Jeff?
Yeah, this is like guaranteed. Anybody's names, even if they have legal names that are different, they're automatically changed.
Tarmac
when you
Jeff.
fly with Bibble.
It's like Bibble Nation's airline.
Bibble Nation is a great airline. And they also follow this channel, so y'all should as well too. And subscribe, hit that notification bell. Yeah, we're on Spotify. I'm getting closer to moving towards certain things, like, creating more of the t-shirts. I have done a little bit of work already on them, but there's been a lot of incidences that have happened. The computer is different. Let's just say that the other one kind of got drilled a little bit. Not intentionally, but I had a little issue with it. So we have a different one. I'll also need it for whenever I start traveling here soon, which y'all will see in, not this podcast, but I believe the next one is when it starts that. So I need something that's going to be good for the traveling purposes. Like the dynamic is going to change a little bit. I won't be in this chair unless I strap it to the roof of my car. But I want to have a better computer so we can still put out videos for y'all, and so y'all can still be able to see us every week with new information. Because if we just slammed out like, 2 videos every week, I just don't think there's the authenticity of it. But at the same time, it's like you're talking to us from like months ago, and I don't think that's the best route to go. So I'm like, the alternative, get a laptop, I think there's a built-in camera in this one, so I may not have to use the other one, but kind of do a calling type setup, whether it's on like Microsoft Teams or Skype or the big one, Zoom. There we go. Whether it's on one of those, either way, we'll have it set up. We'll still get the videos out. They might be delayed depending on how internet is, because it has been bad trying to set some of these up when they just got boo-boo internet connections, and that's just our area. And I'll be going to areas that are going to be like that. So we'll see how it goes, but we're still going to try to push out videos regardless. If they're not out on Wednesday at 6, then they'll be out a little bit afterwards. My goal is to still get it by then. It's just the internet's going to dictate that. Not so much how much I'm able to put into it. Usually that's what I run into, is that the connection's so slow. So yeah, sorry for the long intro with that. I just wanted to explain that because you will see that bit of a difference coming up soon. We might express it a little bit at the beginning, but I wanted this to be the main intro specifically for that. So thank y'all for supporting, subscribing. I can tell we're getting more views, we're getting more insights from y'all and more comments. We appreciate it. Thank y'all for all the feedback, and let's get into it today.
Oh.
Yeah. Alter ego Jeff. That's what
So
Jeff
you're
is.
a part of Imitation Airlines.
No. Only when I'm there I am. Just because my name is Jeff doesn't mean I'm tied to Bibble Airlines. I read contract paragraph 4A. It states anybody who is named Jeff that is not associated with this airlines, they can go jump in a garbage dumpster because that's not their name anymore. That's what they say. But underneath that, they said JK, Bibble.
JK Bibble.
Yes, that's how exactly what it went like.
I was actually referring to the plane thing because I've been watching this new show. It's called Outer Banks. I don't know if y'all have seen it. They've already come out with, I think they're filming season 4 right now, so they have 3 seasons out. So I'm a little late to the game, but I've been watching it, and it's like a treasure hunt type of thing. Like this kid's father, he ended up going missing, and he ends up finding out why. And it's this gold that went missing on the island that his dad was looking for, and he ends up, figuring out where it went, except he nearly gets killed. So I'm only on season 2 right now, but yeah, that's what's happening so far. So I brought up the plane thing.
Outer Banks, I've heard quite a bit about this from people that I've talked to. They say it's a pretty good show overall. I have not heard bad feedback on that show before.
Yeah, I saw the previews a few years back, and I was like, I don't know about it. And then I don't have a show to watch right now, so I was like, well, let me just give it a chance. If I don't like it, I'll just stop watching it. But it's actually really good. If you're into like the mystery solving treasure hunt type of thing, it'll definitely be your show.
I did not anticipate that. I always thought Outer Banks, at least from what I've been told by other people, also it kind of is counteracting with a game that I've heard that kind of starts with that has a space type of theme. I thought that's what it was related to. Because Outer Banks, off the word itself, I'm thinking of like a coastal island, because that would make sense. Like with rocks and like overlooking the lake. That would make sense. Or ocean, wherever they may be, river. And Outer Banks, I would assume it does that, but I would also assume it had something to do with space-related stuff. But, I mean, treasure hunt sounds like you're going back in time, not forward.
Yeah, no, they're not in space. It's like a treasure hunt. They're on this island. And, well, right now, 2 of the main characters, everyone thought that they were dead, but they're not. In season 2, they're in the Bahamas, where the gold is, and they're trying to get it. So.
That's where they had him go? Is that where it's shot at?
I don't know where they shoot it at. I'm sure when they were in the Bahamas, that's probably where they shot it. I know for season 4, they're in Morocco right now shooting.
Okay, so they have changed locations. Oh, that would make sense. They have to change the setting. Now, for the season, since you're on season 2, does it typically change it after the season, or do they change environments during like the whole season?
I mean, they were
hunt?
in the town they were in for all of season 1. It wasn't until the beginning of season 2 that the 2 main characters that everyone thought was dead are now in the Bahamas. So I would say with each season comes like a new place. Because season 4, apparently they're in Morocco, which I don't know how that happened, but I still got, this season and the 3rd season to go to figure out why they're there.
Yeah, and there's not like clues or like any
Not yet.
foreshadowing
It's too soon for me to know why they're there in season 4. But yeah, it's been pretty good so far.
Is it similar to like Uncharted in terms of how they go about their stuff?
I would say so, because they've had people like chasing them down, because there's a lot of people that have been looking for this gold that they haven't been able to find, and these kids were able to find it, even though there's people that have been searching for years and years and years. So I would say it has kind of almost an Uncharted feel to it.
Is that what like kind of drew you to the show, or like why did it draw you in now? I don't since like not previously.
I think I just ran out of things to watch, and I've heard like people be like, "Oh yeah, it's a really good show," and like I've heard it for a while, but now that I don't have a show to watch, I'm like, well, I'll give it a chance. So, I've been doing that a lot with shows like My Life with the Walter Boys. I saw the preview for that and I was like, this looks so dumb, but I was like, I'll give it a chance, and it was actually pretty good. Our mom said the same thing.
Oh, that's what
About
you all
that
were
show.
talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. As I heard you talking about that. Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. Is the show, obviously it's humans, but...
No, it's raccoons.
Well,
Yes, humans. Could you imagine raccoons just looking for treasure? Oh man, hey, I think it's over there. I can smell it. Dude, that's just a skunk.
that would be so odd. That would be like the Penguins of Madagascar.
Yeah.
Because that would be a show based off of that. Maybe not Outer Banks directly, but like similar in terms of missions. Yeah, I don't know. What is it considered? Sci-fi? Like what is it under TV?
I would assume it's probably under mystery or like thriller.
Oh, okay. That would make sense.
Yeah.
I was just wondering about category because that's a weird one to fit in.
And maybe action. Because there's a lot of scenes where they're like punching people or attacking them or being chased after. So I would say probably action too.
Yeah, that would make sense. I think thriller kind of fits that as well too.
Yeah.
And mystery, I can see that all being a category. I just didn't know if it sat in one particularly, like certain shows or like sitcoms. Like you know it's a
sitcom.
You would know it's a sitcom though. I think most people could decipher what a sitcom is.
I'm not a huge fan of them. I never really have been. It's hard for me to get into them because I feel like the storyline is just so loose. Like it's not something that's like definite you can follow.
Yeah, I think it kind of pertains to the person. Because what I noticed with sitcoms, and this is just my personal observation, typically somebody who either has a kid or has had a kid before are drawn to that because of the family notion of it. Because that's what I've noticed, like, you know, when did our mom watch that? Well, she would watch that whenever we were kids and stuff. Now, I don't know about previously because then you start getting before like TV and stuff like that. Not trying to say we're fucking dinosaurs, but just stating that I've seen this in people who are my age as well too, who have a kid and they watch sitcoms because it's relatable to them at that point of time. I think that's why they're more drawn to it typically. I've always wondered though, like the mystery and crime thing for women, like why is that such a big thing?
I don't know.
Like that's such a large thing. Like
It really is,
probably, I could probably go to everybody in this building and ask them like, hey, does like your wife or your girlfriend or even just your other roommate, do they watch it? Like if they're female, do they watch crime related shows? And I would think, yeah, I would get a high % chance of that being the case. I would also think the same for like young adults. And like if we wanted to do like a study like between 20 and 35, I think that would probably be your highest, maybe not highest % chance. I would think 40s maybe, because 40s, I feel like they're not using their time so much with all the other things that go on whenever you have families, when you have these responsibilities, you're kind of winding down in a manner. So you have a lot more free time. And I think that they would start gravitating more toward those during that time. I think it's more about how you occupy your time, because I can see like people's mothers consuming a lot of that during that time. They would consume sitcoms. But then when you start moving outside of that, they want to kind of expand themselves more into like, wow, I can't believe that had happened, or why that had happened. I also think it's the emotional draw though, that the drama and mystery does bring to them, because they're like, whoa, that's like kind of crazy. You can almost turn into like an emotional like mastery in a manner, because you have these different scenarios. Even though they're from shows, there's still possibilities. to happen. And people, whenever they're so ingrained into watching shows too, they start to become the character of a show without even realizing it. Because if you consume that all the time, you're going to end up displaying it. And I've seen that with friends, where if they're tied to shows or they believe, you know, they're this type of character or that type of character, they'll start acting out the characteristics of that person subconsciously. It doesn't mean that it's them though. I mean, it's never going to be them because that's a character that's already been created and you were here to create your own character. But I just find it interesting with like mystery, like the draw to it. Like, why are women so drawn to it?
I want to say part of it is maybe trying to prepare ourselves or like see things that happen, especially when you get into like true crime. I used to watch Forensic Files all the time, and seeing like the stuff that happens to women is like horrible. So I think it's almost like trying to prepare yourself. Like, what could happen? What could I do to get out of this situation type of thing. I think that's why women are more drawn to it, or at least partly.
What about you? What are you drawn to, like crime shows, like specifically?
Like the specific show, or?
Not a specific show, but like just crime shows in general. Like, what is the draw to it for you personally? Like, what do you think is your like top reason for watching it?
I don't know. I guess I just, at least for Outer Banks, I just like the like anticipation where it's like you can't wait to get to the next episode. Because I've watched shows where it's like there are certain, you know, episodes where you're like, ooh, I can't wait to get to the next one, what happens? But then you have some episodes that are kind of slower and you're kind of like, all right, let's move it along. But I feel like with like mystery or crime, it's always there. Like with Outer Banks, I can't stop pressing next episode because I'm just like, oh, wait, what just happened? And so I feel like that's what happens with the mystery and crime. It's like it always leaves off on a cliffhanger and you're like, whoa, wait a second, what just happened? What's going to happen next?
But don't all shows do that though?
Not always.
Like sitcoms? I feel like sitcoms do that.
I don't know. I feel like the mystery and crime ones are more juicier though than a sitcom one. Like sitcoms, like, oh, she kissed who?
Yeah, it's simple. I think it's very simple of like understanding the emotions and what can happen next. Like your prediction of like, oh, this is gonna happen. It's predictable. But I think people like that. Like being in a family unit, you want things to be predictable and simple because the more chaotic it becomes, the harder it is to control that unit. And that's ultimately your goal, is trying to direct everything in the way that you want it. I mean, as a parent, that's what you would want. But in the teenage years, you start to run into that problem where that direction is no longer in your ballpark as much. It still is, it's just that becomes a harder area, I think, of development. Of course, like the baby is very hard in developing all that because you literally have to watch and put all your attention to it. But now that you're not putting your attention to that, I think that you have to start paying attention to how you react to their reactions, right? Because that ultimately is going to leave some imprintation of them going into adulthood that becomes important. Because you ultimately are like reflecting and analyzing yourself in the process. I had this thought the other day of when you are starting to grow up and, you know, move forward in life and become an adult and have a family, I think the thing that you start to focus on is the next set of responsibilities of like becoming a parent and having to use your time for the kid and for your husband or wife, because those are allocated areas of time. That's something that you lose, a very valuable asset. But that energy transfer, I guess, it's a very large aspect of like life and in general of knowing what that next turning point is for that person. Like when that stuff starts to come into fruition, you're like, oh, it's all aligning, it all makes sense. It's very beautiful because it's like you're imitating somebody your entire life, your parent your entire life, both of them. And then you have to come to the aspect of, how do I not intimidate the bad aspects of them? And how do I harness the good parts of them? Because that's what you're doing as a kid. That's how you learn your language. That's how you learn your movement. That's how you learn how to react to stuff, is through them. So they're such an essential part of your life, to the point where you have to analyze and understand why you're having some reactions, whether they're yours or somebody down the lineage, like we've talked in other podcasts. But I mean, the direct correlation is, are you imitating or are you actually acting and creating what somebody will be imitating after you, which is that child or somebody who looks up to you? Because that's what idols do too, is they start imitating their idol to the point where it's grossly not them. It's grossly some other beast that they created because they wanted the fantasy to live, not the reality. And somebody can be so drawn to that. You think of like fans that are part of Jonas Brothers that will literally like do anything to like even like say a word to the, you know, one of the brothers or all of the brothers. They'll literally like, I'll rip out my eyes. Like they'll say crazy stuff like that. And some of them will literally go down that route if given the option. That's where power is very, very much needed of responsibility for the person who has it. Because if they're just like, yeah, you can do that. Well, what just happened? They're like, well, I didn't do anything. They're the ones who did it. But it's still going to fall back on them because that person is so mesmerized by them that they can't even realize, wait, I could be an idol too. Next step on American Idol.
I mean, it starts with the parents. Obviously, as a kid, you learn everything from a parent, and so you try to mimic them. That's how we learn how to speak, or our mannerisms, or how to walk. But then we get into, I mean, you remember as kids when we used to play our games, we would base them off of movies or shows or something that we watched.
Yeah, it's something that we had recently watched.
Yeah.
I remember that with the Barbie
We would
shit.
like reenact it, be like, oh, well, I'm this character and you're this character. So, I mean, doing that as kids, sometimes... You shouldn't have put that there.
Don't kick the table again.
I was just pushing myself.
Okay, go ahead, continue.
I don't even know what I was saying.
How did you lose track of thought? That's actually funny because a dropping of something like that usually can like bring a shift to reality.
Well, where was I then?
I don't know. You forgot what you were talking about.
I was in Bibble Nation land.
But that's what can happen. Like that's like a drop of a dime as well too. Like people will get distracted by that and lose complete train of thought. Usually it invokes a fight.
You're about to say usually it invokes a vogue. It's like, wait, what?
If I would have done that, the percent chance below 1. I don't even know what that is.
You never heard of voguing? Madonna. No? Okay.
You want to give an explanation on what that is?
I mean, I just know that it's like this. It's like a
That's called voguing?
Yeah.
Is it like in reference to the magazine?
I would assume so, yes.
That would make sense too. I think they put them in a box. Like their face is like in a box or like their body's in a box.
I mean, technically the magazine's like a rectangle, so sure.
It is, but no, like specifically they indent it to look like somebody's in a box. Kind of like how Time magazine has it down the middle or they just have one whole pose of that person. I think it's the same with Vogue, but they have that style. If I were to just say that, maybe more than 1%, maybe I do know this.
He's actually a Vogue master.
I
He's
actually
a
work
huge
it.
Madonna fan.
I think I actually met somebody who worked as a photographer for them. Same
For
with
Vogue.
Yeah, in like other like major magazines. He's somebody that I delivered like groceries to. I have a general area of where he lives. Let me give you social. Every time it's always resorting in that.
Just give out people's information.
But that wasn't specific enough.
You've gotten really close without saying where we live, though.
He is a proud Teletubby fan.
You don't know that.
No, I don't think he is.
You are, though.
Not confirmed.
TMT exclusive.
But I think what you were referring to earlier is if we want to get the train of thought going again, you were talking about how we would imitate our parents and we would act it out through like the Barbie cruise ship and us, you know, bringing that into fruition. And I think you were expanding upon that.
You didn't jog my memory. So.
Yeah, because you probably need the next steps in the process, which I'm having to do an internal dive. I'm trying to figure out what
Well,
that
I
is.
know that I was talking about like... Nope. like acting out different movies and stuff we've seen. But I guess, for some people, as they get older, it can continue on into their adult life, which is how you get the people that, if they find someone, they're like, I will do anything for you. And like get to that crazy point.
That's scammers. That's actually scammers at that point that do that. Because that's the next step that you fall into. At least I know I had, where I'm like, oh my God, how can I make money? How can I do stuff? And then it's like, oh, this person's paying this much? Okay. And just do it. And then you realize, wait a minute, why are all these weird steps happening? Why are they wanting me to give them blood? This did not happen. But
This did happen.
Did not. Don't listen.
He did get scammed though.
I have got scammed on actually a few occasions. But
I haven't.
But yeah, but you don't understand the outside world. Thank you.
Dang.
Not the scamming outside world, at least. That's a whole different ballpark.
Dink.
But yeah, that's what can happen. I think that they would fall into scamming of many sorts. But I also think they will start to like devalue themselves in a way.
Well, yeah, because they value somebody else so much more. So they don't care about themselves, their well-being. Like the people that will sit outside like days before like somebody is coming to town or doing an event somewhere just so they can see them.
Yeah.
They'll sit out in horrible weather, sit there for days, barely get any food or water, just for a human being.
And that intention is beautiful if it went towards something that was actually going to be productive for them. Which I'm not going to say that that's not productive either. Because the fact that they withstood all of the rain, hail, sleet, not eating, barely sleeping, making sure they hold their place in line, that's dedication. It's just, do you draw that to other aspects of your life, or do you just draw it to that person? Because ultimately that's what's giving the person power at that point. If they have people doing that, then they know that they're in control basically. Which, again, it's important who has control in that case. Because that's why like giving up full control over to something doesn't make sense to me. Like in terms of like yes, you sign documents, you sign leases and stuff like that, right? That's a form of control, but it's not total control. Like, yes, you're locked in a lease, and yes, you have to pay it, right? But you don't technically have to take that route of doing it. You can take the harder route, which is just going to court and having to deal with it that way. But that's going to give you more time to do other things, maybe accumulate more money and do stuff. Now, I'm not advocating for that to happen. I'm just giving alternate routes to just taking the one route of doing that, because that wouldn't work every single time. You can't have full control over somebody unless that person is still willing to give it up. So that's the problem that I see with the drawing of those people who are like, I'm willing to sacrifice everything for that. And it's like, is that actually worth sacrificing in your true own way of form of yourself? And you'll know, because that higher thought will be like, no, that's not actually the case. There's another way that we can do this than just, okay, I'm going to go to this concert and just do that. But there are people who truly believe that. That's why I believe there's not things called atheists either. Because if those people still believe in something, that's still belief in and of itself. Now, worshiping is a different thing entirely. But jumping into that specifically with people who are like giving up full control over this stuff, like within religions, they do that because they want to give it up to the higher God. Now, that is going to give it power regardless. That's why they recruit people all the time. Now, not all religions do it because they have other forms of recruitment than just shoving it in your face and being like, yeah, I'm going to come up to your door with the pamphlet. Have you heard Jesus today? Because I have. And he said, the bells are ringing. Time to wake up. Time to come to church.
So you just woke me up from my slumber.
Yeah. You trying to hear about the Bible today, ma'am?
No, thank you. Goodbye.
Nope. And that's when they barge in your house because they have control over you. No, but that, I think they will like do that. Like, obviously there are certain religions. I know a lot of them under Christianity do that. Catholic.
Barge into your house?
No, but like go up to your house and like try to promote it. Whereas some religions, they do not do that. Now, barging in the house says you can be religious or not at that point. You can just barge in no matter who. Like FBI will barge in. They're not under a certain religion.
They're under Bible Nation.
No. I don't know if they would be under Bible Nation. That's a hard one right there.
Bible Nation recruited them so he can turn them against the government.
I think Bible Nation...
So it can be Bible Nation.
Bible Nation could, transform anything. Like kind of how the plane earlier that we heard in the background, that noise, they can kind of control whatever. If it can manipulate outside of the physics that we've already created here, they might have a chance.
They've already got one.
I think that's what holds our world together too, is that you have those clashing forces of Bible Nation and the FBI. No, but the controlling forces like that have to have the opposing like meetups with one another to help keep that balance. Because it's not that both of them are right or wrong about it. It's just there has to be a balance from both of those sides to create something, I guess, better for our future. Because if you only had one side, then they would dominate and then total power would corrupt them and then something would fall. Right? Or at least over time it would. And it could be very bad, very fast, depending on what it is. We've seen this in history with many people. Kingdoms, we've seen this fall. We've seen this happen throughout Europe specifically with all of their wars since forever. Like the 1300s is where I'm thinking all the way back to. All of those different wars that they had gone through with emperors and them taking over the lands. And I just think about the balance aspect of like, you have the one person who's very extreme, like I hate light bulbs, if we were to give it an example. And then you have somebody that's like, they illuminate better than the sun. Those are absolute opposite people. But in the manner they help balance it, because then you get those people that are like, well, lights are useful for this purpose. And they're like, okay. And each purpose is different, but it's balanced that way. It's not like I'm never going to own a light in my life again. And they're going to sit in the dark. Yet there are still going to be your extreme ones that are like that. Probably less than 1%, I would think, of the population. Same with the people who are like, I absolutely love lights. I have to have lights in every aspect of it. Because that's what we would start to consider phobias. Like you start to fear the other thing at that point because you're going so far to the other extreme that you're like, wow, I don't want that either. Like I don't want light, or I do want light. Like you only need it at specific times is what the rational individuals would see. People who have used them before. They have their own uses until they start to become obsessed with that thing. And that is the same concept of people who fall into idols. Because if they fall into that, then they start to fall into those extremes. And what do those extremes do? They tear down you physically. Because you're avoiding something at that point. And that's a personality trait that never leads to a successful aspect of you living your life. Like where you can look back at the age of 60 and be like, I feel like I really did my task. And I feel like you should experience that every year. You love light bulbs, but you don't idolize them.
He's my new idol.
He is.
Yeah.
You don't seem very enthralled with him.
Excuse me.
Yeah. You're not enthralled with the light bulbs.
You don't know that.
I can tell because you gave me the most monotone answer for that. Usually if somebody's an extremist, they're going to go, they might hide.
I love light bulbs.
No, that was like, that actually reminded me of somebody who was on this show, Bolby. That actually is Bolby.
Side by side comparison.
That actually might be the one for the thumbnail this time. But I think those opposing forces are good to balance the extremities of that. Because I think we fall into holes when we get a new discovery of something, because everybody's on top of it and they're like, oh my gosh, can I get more of it? But then they just keep destroying it. Like when light bulbs, how long light bulbs took to get created, and then once people had them, now we think of it as like it's an everyday thing. No, it's technology. This is technology.
Wow, I didn't know you were so passionate about light.
This is an extremist. No. No, but it's these things that are like, first, like, they're like, and everybody's all about it, and then it just dissipates. And
what are we supposed to be like? Oh, I love light bulbs every day.
I'm not stating that, but like it's to grow the larger thing where those things fall into traps. And you talked about it earlier with the show. Once you watch it, you can't get enough of it. That's originally what people have on certain things when they discover them, is they want to mess with them more. The problem is that when you do that, you get more answers, and that's a beautiful thing. But you can also release something you don't want to release because you couldn't wait. And there's like experiments on this. Like psychologists have done this with kids where they'll give them a marshmallow and they'll be like, okay, you can eat this marshmallow now, and that's the only marshmallow that you're gonna get. But if you wait, you'll get 3 marshmallows. And what they do is they walk outside of the room the child's thinking that they can't see them anymore. But of course, it's an experiment. And they just look at it, and some of them will touch it, and then others will like eat it immediately and then try to hide up the fact that they didn't eat it. And then there's people who don't eat it and actually endure the case. But in most cases, what are kids gonna do? They're gonna want immediate gratification. So they're gonna grab that marshmallow and then hide up the fact that they ate it. But there's a small percentage that won't do that. And I think that is like the survival of the fittest right there. Is like the people who go do that, like, yes, they have the chance to die and they take the risk, and some do.
Eating a marshmallow?
From eating a marshmallow.
It's actually a bomb in it.
If that was in the experiment, we probably wouldn't know about it if that was
Probably
the case.
not.
But it's probably out there somewhere that there's an experiment like that. But not with marshmallows, but like with other things that could lead to problems. Like, for instance, let's say we actually did have time travel, right? And people got to know about it immediately. Well, what do you think most people are going to do? They're going to try to step into it and be like, okay, we can do this. After they've confirmed that a certain set of people beforehand had done it, right? Usually when you're the first person to do it, it's it could be a flop. Somebody can be like, I can't believe you just did that. Why did you do that? And then you're going to get all the ridicule. Now, I think you're going to get that regardless, no matter what you're given in life. Whether somebody gives you like a glass to drink and they're like, just drink it. There are going to be people who immediately take it down. And then there's people who are like, I don't know, I have more questions. Now, who is going to be overall, I guess, getting the upper hand in that case? Who's going to get more of the power? Well, the person who automatically does it is going to show that they have power, but it could be the opposite where they do not have any because they end up getting hurt by doing the thing that they did by drinking from the glass. Whereas the people who just observed it, they would just be like, oh, like, I didn't do it. And they could have great consequences. Maybe they've gained power, or maybe they didn't, because that thing could have given them something that they've never imagined before. Now, I'm not saying like in terms of like great feelings and all of that type of stuff. I just mean in terms of like they did the thing and now that power is their reward, right? You may have lost me there, but it's okay. But I guess it's just how, power is grabbed is in both ways, both from immediate taking action and then not taking action. But I think it's deferring when it's necessary to take action and when you should probably not do it as much, especially if it becomes an addiction. And anybody can call something an addiction, right? Like I can say that
Somebody just stole your car.
That's fine. Like yours did. So, the addiction aspect would be like simple everyday pleasures. I would consider like caffeine each morning an addiction, right? Whereas people would be like, oh no, I would not consider that an addiction in terms of the negative connotation of it, which when they think of addiction, they're like, oh, meth head, crackhead, easily, one of those. But it's none of...
That's not the definition of an addiction. An addiction is something that you feel like you can't live without. That you have to have every day.
I don't know if it's feel necessarily, because it's not, you do lose feelings when using it depending on what it is, because you've given that away. You've given away that excitement.
But before you do it, you're like, I need it. I have to have it.
Yeah. And that is the important pivotal point, because if you can't control your mind and be like, no, I'm not going to do that, because you've identified it as being an addiction, that's where you have to step in and be like, I'm not going to be the first person to drink that water. I'm going to wait. But then you're going to have the other person who has to test, maybe I should drink it this time and see what the results are. Because that's the difference between a dreamer and a doer. The dreamer is the one who's sitting back looking at the glass. Whereas the doer is the one that's doing like...
How do we go from there, from addiction to here?
You lost the connection to that? Well...
You went from being like people that like things too much are addicted to them, and you're like, well, then you have the dreamer and the doer. You're either gonna do it or you're not.
Well, right, because it's like elaborating multiple aspects of somebody's personality, right? Because an addiction is something that where somebody's just going to do it automatically. But I'm putting them in that position of the example of the glass. The doer, the person that is addicted, is going to end up just doing it every single time where they drink the glass. We're talking about extremities from the other conversation too, where it's on both ends, where the person is just observing it and they're just thinking of what can happen instead of like actually taking action to know what's happening. Both of them can't stay on that side of doing that all the time, because the person who drinks all the time is gonna obviously have some issues because it's like they're not consuming that substance. Whereas this person never consumes it and never gets the ability of what that person did have at some point, even if it may have killed them overall. It gave them something to work with. It gave them life in a manner, if we want to say like it's the life force in that cup or it's the death force. It's like Russian roulette. You don't know exactly what it's going to be, but with your own calculations and your own feelings and controlling your dopamine and knowing when something is right and wrong, that is clouded by addiction. All you care about is that thing. Like when somebody's hungry, all they care about is food. All they care about is water. But to bring it to that next step, they have to be like, okay, well, I'm going to save a little bit of this food and I'm going to save a little bit of this water, and I'm just going to work off what I have and test my body to the next limit, basically, of how far I can go with it. And people do this. Perfect example is a guy that hasn't eaten for 70 years. And I couldn't believe this when I heard this story. I was like, how? Like, it's always been proven otherwise, but he's done it. He's lived off of water. Now, I have explained this when I was telling a friend this, though. If they were doing something like lifting and all the extreme conditioning, I don't think that their muscles would be able to support all of that if they had not lived off of those nutrients. Now, my question is to that person who has done that. And I don't think he's done any of the physical work and stuff like that. I think he's mainly meditated and done his own thing at the house. He hasn't really moved, basically. How is he extracting the nutrients from food without consuming it? What do you think the answer to that would be?
Isn't there a movie about this?
What do you have on this? I don't know.
I don't remember what the movie's called, but it was like this girl that... Was it that she hadn't eaten? I think so, and they went to do an investigation or something like that. And they were like, how is she not dead? Maybe I'm thinking about something else. I don't remember. I just know she hadn't eaten and they had to do an investigation on it. And they found out that somebody was sneaking food to her.
I don't mean in that case particularly, but that is another way that somebody can try to prove it. Another power move as well too, where it's like, yeah, I'm not the person eating because I'm not gluttonous. But yet behind the back, they're actually eating. They're given the breadcrumbs, so to say. But I mean outside of that, where they aren't actually getting food. They're not eating any food. How would they be able to obtain that energy without eating food? What do you think is another way? Because I believe it's possible.
I don't.
You don't think it's possible to extract those nutrients that you need for yourself
Without eating? Yeah, no.
Really?
It would be extremely hard, but apparently
For sure.
somebody's done it.
For sure, I would agree. But I would not say it's impossible, though.
I mean, nothing's impossible, but...
I think the extraction is probably from his breathing techniques and where he places himself around. Because although he may not eat the food, if he sat like in a field of like where food grows and actually was like in tune with the earth and had channelly rooted himself to like the ground, I think there's a way, because like, think of like a seed getting placed under the dirt and it's getting water and it has sunlight. Well, that's exactly what you're doing. You're your own flower as well too. You need water and you need sunlight. And that's proven, because people usually get sick, ill, whatever you want to call it, whenever they don't have enough sun. And that was something that occurred during COVID, is because people didn't absorb that anymore because you were contained to being inside. But even outside of that, we've always been accustomed to being around the sun. That's always given us good health. When they tell you that you're feeling down, you should go outside to see the sun. Or if it's that you're feeling cloudy, you should go outside and see the sun.
I think that's more
ultimate
about
source.
movement, though. Like, the sun is a part of it, but it's also the movement. You need to get your body moving.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I think that also in tune like ties to it as well, but that would actually play into the point of the seed thing, because if you planted yourself in that dark room, if we want to bring back the light thing, where you're in a dark room and you don't see sunlight, well, that's almost taking a step backwards in a manner, right? In terms of like, if you think about the caveman, because they never went outside to go see the light, but when somebody finally did, then over time, it was hard to convince the people that were in the dark to actually step into the light. And this application is across all of the examples that we've just used as well too, is the difference between that. And I'm not saying that you should always go into the light too, because again, it's playing into the light bulb thing. You can't always be in the light, but you can't always be in the dark, because you have to master what Jung calls your dark side, your dark energy, which is what you can do in those scenarios where it's like you have total control, you have total power, where you can do whatever you want. That is the darker side of yourself, and that has to be trained to deal with that, deal with the darker energies. But to bring it back to the root of the person as a seed, if you were to go sit on the dirt, you are connected now with the earth. And if you have brought in water, that means you should be sprouting, right? And if you're sitting on that earth, I think there's a way that you can extract nutrients from it if you are focused enough on it. I'm not saying it's easy by any regards, nor have I done it, but it would make sense to me. Because we are a life force in ourselves. And where does the rest of the life force get extracted from? From underneath. But they also get extracted from above, which is that sun. Both the water and the sun. So you are a part of that unit. So if he were to sit there, I think that he would be able to extract nutrients without having any specific cord that you can see attached to it. Because that's like plants too. We can't see when they're getting nutrients and sucking them up either. Because it's so small that you can't tell. And I think the same type of force is drawn whenever somebody is, focused enough on extracting that water or extracting those nutrients from the things around them. And that's also noticed too. Like what I noticed with the homeless people is when they walk on the side, they're stepping where that grass is. What eventually happens to that grass? Well, it's gone because they're stepping on it. But their energy is not typically the best either at all times because they're emotionally everywhere with their addiction. So wherever they're stepping, they're killing it. Instead of the opposite, where if somebody sat there, they probably can grow a shrubbery around them and even underneath of them potentially. It all depends about the energy that you bring into it though. Because if you were to channel all of those darker energies, like if he were to sit there and act as a plant, he can extract all the bad energies into him or back into the ground. So your flow and concentration matter, because if you mess that up, you can end up hurting one or the other, which is always a hard choice. It's like, do you kill that person or do you have to kill yourself in the process? Which is a tough decision, because then you have to think about, okay, what would I do if this person was like gonna get killed and I had to make a decision on it, which might be a part of why you like mysteries and thriller. To even tie into that is the fact that the outcome is so crazy that it's like, well, what are they gonna choose? How's the story gonna continue?
Yeah.
con el 1, el 3 soy yo.
4 letras trae el mando, Jalisco cuidando y en Guanajuato el donde ando yo. Ya pasaron las blindadas, dice un camarada, no es gobierno, va arriba el señor.